Hi, my name is Brandon Livrago. I'm currently a Staff Sergeant in the United States Army, getting out in June 2026. That is why I came across the skill bridge opportunity for Code Platoon and am submitting my application. So, for the first Coder Byte exercise, we did the string challenge. I was just going to briefly talk about kind of the rationale behind the string challenge. Um, More importantly, with any problem, you always have to understand the problem. I know that kind of sounds redundant, but the problem itself, I wanted to know in detail. That it is effectively just making sure that A or B in either order comes exactly three characters with in between, so four characters afterwards. So then I came up with a plan. The plan being within the function to have a loop, which would loop through the string. And because the string has to have three characters in between, if the A or B happens either too early or too late in that string, it's not going to be able to go afterwards. So it really has to be in the meat and potatoes of the string. And then you're going to compare the two characters. So whether A is first or B is first, that's how we end up going into the if statements. But quick admin note, I put var OCG as A for a variable and var filter SCG as B as a variable, simply because it was detailed as a thing to do in the prior instructions for this challenge. But then moving on, I basically then wrote if statement for as if the string parameter for the index I equals, in this case, var OCG, but A, and four characters afterwards, it equals B, then return true. So then conversely, I just wrote the exact same thing, but in reverse, with B coming first and then A coming afterwards. So with a function, we all know that in order for it to populate out, you have to do return. So that's where the return string parameters comes up. But then we did return false if that wasn't the case, right? So if A or B wasn't four characters in between each other. So really, you're using indexing to check the positions in the string, and then just seeing all the possible pairs. So then it just loops through that string. That kind of is how I approach the string challenge. It's one of the easier ones. Obviously, there's not much arithmetic involved aside from just the +4. Um, I'm new to coding, so some of the mathematical ones are tougher for me, just because I haven't gotten to that mentality yet. But the for loops, I did the online code self-paced introduction that you guys have, and it really did emphasize the for loops and things like that. So with the for I in the range and then the length, it was rather straightforward and kind of actually very similar to some of the functions in the section 5 of your guys' little self-paced one. Moving onwards, I want to kind of highlight the second half of this video. I want to quickly go over a time when I was posed with a difficult problem set and how I would approach it differently now. So I learned Russian in a short 5.5 months in the United States Special Operations Language School. And at that time, I had taken some Spanish previously, but never really took on a big challenge like Russian, right? That uses a different alphabet. One of the things that I right off the bat would do, including something similar like the code and boot camp, is just get right into it, because I was very hesitant to speak Russian when really that was our end goal, right? So similar to that, when it comes to coding, rather than read about it in a book, I think it's much more important, similar to what I eventually learned in speaking Russian, is to get out there and speak Russian. Um, Similar with that, sometimes people always want to find the differences with languages. For me, now looking back at Russian, we always like to point out, oh, here's how it's different than English. Here's how it's different than Spanish, a Latin language. Um, I also found it more useful later on finding the similarities. So, what does Russian have in common with English? And really starting from there, because sometimes when you find the similarities, you're able to fix a problem quicker. So for me, coding does seem to kind of go hand in hand with picking up an actual literal language, and that's where I would maybe approach that a little differently moving forward, jumping just in the deep end. I also work on the side. I do a little freelance for Upwork. I have a client out of Philadelphia who we did some Google ads for, and one of the things that I approached in the previous problem set was I am a lot of times I'm not a technician. I get people together in order to fix a problem. And in this client's instance, I was able to bring in a few people off of Upwork itself to fix the client's problem. But moving forward with custom websites as well as Google Tag Manager, I'm hoping that the background in code Platoon will allow me to act more as a technician, so that in a way I don't have to rely on other people, but then I'm also able to speak to it better. So that's also a different way, both an academic instance, but also a professional instance of how I've had a problem set, addressed it in the past, but also hope to address it differently in the future. Thank you.